Hello and welcome to today's webinar titled Time-Saving Tips for Worship Planning with Lutheran Service Builder. My name is Peter Frank and I'll be leading our webinar today. I am the digital product owner here at Concordia Publishing House, which is kind of a funny title. I am now a part-time employee here. I used to be full-time and was our manager of marketing technology and did a number of different things. Now I am a full-time seminary student, so I work here at CPH just a few hours a week. So I got a different title because most of my responsibilities are going elsewhere. But one of my favorite things to do is work with our church software and host webinars like this. So I'm still here doing this today, and I'm happy to be here. My email address is on the screen, and you are more than welcome to email me with any of your questions. I'm always happy to respond. I'm a little bit slower in my responses these days now that I'm on a part-time schedule. And right now I'm full-time for about 2 weeks. I'll be going down to part-time after that to about 8 hours a week. So if you don't get a response from me, don't feel bad. I'll also share some other contact information with you later on, which is a place to get quicker answers than emailing me. Again, we are Concordia Publishing House. We have been in business for, if you do the math, 152 years, going on 153 this September. This picture here is just a small portion of our team. This was taken back at our 150th anniversary just a few years ago. We've been serving the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. We are the publishing arm. And so everything we do is to support the mission and ministry of our churches. As now I'm getting ready to enter into that ministry full-time in just a couple of years, it's even more important to me today than ever before. Now we're going to be talking about Lutheran Service Builder today. If you are not familiar with Lutheran Service Builder, it is a web-based application, a software that's all online that helps churches, church workers plan out their worship services, build their bulletins, export their slide decks or presentations for worship, and also conform with copyright requirements. So we're going to touch on most of those things. I'm not going to focus on presentations too much today. I might show you a little bit. We got a lot of other things to talk about. Now, Lutheran Service Builder was started back in 2006 by a seminarian, a friend of mine, Bob Lale. He was taking the Introduction to Worship class, and he had a programmer background. And as he was doing some of the projects, he was like, you know, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And so he started building a product and a software. He sold it to CPH, and then he came and worked with us for about 10 years to really get it off of the ground and continue to improve it. And then he made some other products for us too. So Bob has moved on to other adventures, but I still keep in touch with him, and he's always glad to hear how many churches are using Lutheran Service Builder today. In fact, it is over 3,000, which means it's over half of the LCMS that is using that. So I just finished taking that Introduction to Worship class at the seminary, and Lutheran Service Builder was a huge help to me during that class. I know that wasn't his only purpose in creating that, but it's still working for that purpose as well as many other things. A couple of housekeeping items before we go too far. I'm planning about 50 minutes for presentation. I am notorious for going over that, as I've already started to see in my sermons. So bear with me if I go past that 50 minutes. I'm planning about 10 minutes for question and answers. Now, if I don't have enough questions, well, then that's okay. And if I have too many questions, I'm happy to go over the hour, but that's the plan right now. I did want to let you know that all attendees are muted. That's just how we operate. We've got a good number of people. I'm seeing that number growing. I can't possibly answer all the questions verbally, and so that's why we ask you to put them in our queue, and you can do that throughout the webinar. In fact, I see a couple already showing up, so that's great. Please ask the questions throughout. I'm the only one on the webinar today. We don't have anybody fielding those questions, so I won't get to them during the webinar, most likely, unless it just happens to be part of my outline, but we will do it during that dedicated time. Now, one of the most common questions I get is, will this be recorded and will I get access to it? The answer to both of those is yes. Yes, it will be recorded. In fact, I started recording right at the beginning, so it's recording right now, and we will be sharing this with you most likely within the next 48 hours or so. We try to shoot for quicker than that, but sometimes things take up time and we're not able to get it out right away. So just know that we will be sharing this. And if you are watching this recording after the fact, welcome. I'm sorry you couldn't be here live, but I'm glad you're still getting to watch it. Now, I always like to make some assumptions about who's going to be at the webinar. And this helps me kind of frame my outline, and it helps you know where I'm coming from. Now, if you don't meet all these assumptions, that's okay. But this is what was going through my mind as I prepared for it. So I'm assuming you understand the basics of Lutheran worship. This is not a worship webinar. I'm not going to be teaching you about the divine service and all of that. You'll see some of that as we go through, of course, but that's not the purpose. I'm also assuming that your church prints a bulletin of some form for every service. Now, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a full detailed bulletin. Maybe you might just have an outline, but that is going to be primarily what I show you today is the bulletin. If you only do a presentation, you'll see a little bit of this. A lot of the principles still apply, but I'm going to be working in the bulletin view for the most part today. I'm also assuming you have more tasks than you have time. That's really the goal today. I'm not going to show you all the features, but I'm going to show you the ones that really save time. And that's the focus. Now, much of Builder was built to save time, so you're going to get a good overview of the software. But that is my focus today. And finally, I am operating under the assumption that you are not currently using Lutheran Service Builder. If you are, great, I'm glad you're here. I'm going to show you some stuff you already know, and hopefully plenty of things that you don't know, or at least different ways of doing things. But I'm going to start kind of at ground zero and work my way up in terms of detail. So if you hear me say things like, well, yeah, Peter, I've been doing that for weeks or months, well, that's why. I'm assuming you don't. Now, if you have never used Lutheran Service Builder, you barely know what I'm talking about, you can go ahead and start your free trial today and follow along with me. You go to LutheranServiceBuilder.com, there's a start free trial button. You can go in and you'll be able to access pretty much everything we're doing today with that free trial. So if you haven't got that set up, I encourage you to do that just so you can follow along. You can always do it afterwards too, no big deal. All right, let me find out a little bit more about who's here. So I'm going to put a few poll questions up there, and that'll help me. So the first thing is to know a little bit about the role of the people who are here. So you should see this coming up. What is your primary role at the church? Now, as I know already and am learning more every day at seminary, people wear many, many different hats in the church. This is just your primary role. You may end up doing all 4 of these roles, but which one are you paid to do? Or at least do your call documents or your job descriptions say? All right, we've got most people have put things in. We've got 78%, 80. Okay, I'm going to close that up in just a second. All right, so I'll share these results so that everybody can see what we're doing today. We've got about 37% who are pastors, 39% who are administrators, 17 church musicians, and from there. So that's about typical, pretty much what I expected. So that's great. Thank you very much. All right, let's do another one. We'll keep these quick. I want to know a little bit about church size. What was your church's weekly attendance pre-COVID? COVID has certainly changed everything, and everybody's been affected in different ways. But what was it before COVID? I think that's a good sign of how your church operates. I just got finished with a class on pastoral leadership. We talked about church size dynamics, and so this is mostly for my curiosity, but it does factor in a little bit later on as we start talking about licenses. So yeah, it looks like the majority of the churches who are here are in that. I can go ahead and close this and share this with you. You can see, there you go, the majority are in that 51 to 199 weekly worship attendance. We do have some that are a bit smaller and some that are a bit larger than that, but mostly in that range. And that seems pretty standard for the LCMS. Very good, thank you for that. And the last one is just to really reiterate that last assumption that I had. Are you currently using Lutheran Service Builder at your church? Yes, we are using Lutheran Service Builder 2. Yes, we are using the online Lutheran Service Builder. No, but I personally have used it before, or no, not at all. Again, this is going to help me present a little bit more. I will share these results with you too, so you know who's here. And yeah, this is an interesting mix. I guess this is probably not too surprising. We are about almost 50-50 with, yeah, we'll go ahead and close this and share that. About 43% are currently using the online version and 45% are not using it at all. So that's great. One of the things I like to do with these webinars is to not make them a big sales pitch, especially if you're already using it. I want to train you on how to use it better. And for those of you who are not using it, nobody likes to sit through a sales pitch anyways. I'm going to share some information about pricing at the very end because we have a lot of questions about that. So when we get to that point, if you're already a customer, you can kind of tune out. You don't have to worry about that, but that'll be near the very end. All right, that was my last question for you. So thank you very much. We're going to go through, there we go. My training goal for you today is that by the end of today, you will know how to plan your first worship service, prepare a bulletin, and export it from Lutheran Service Builder. Pretty basic stuff, but there will be time-saving tips along the way. So I'll go through this outline quickly. We're going to look at the calendar and service plan, talk about how to use those. We're going to insert, select, remove elements. We're going to change how elements appear in the bulletin. We're going to save custom liturgies. This is one of the biggest time-saving tips. I'll show you that in pretty good detail. Then we're going to customize bulletin formats. Again, this is something that can save you a lot of time if you're doing work on formatting, which I know when preparing a bulletin can be a big deal. I'm going to show you how to export that. Sometimes I forget that step, and that's an important step. I'll get a question about that, and be like, oh, well, it's so easy, let me show you. And then we're going to talk about trial and licenses and just what all that means, because there's often questions about what can I or can I not do depending on what I've done, what I've purchased. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to switch my screen over to Lutheran Service Builder, and you'll see my camera light up from the white side of my screen. This is the calendar view. And when you get into Lutheran Service Builder, this is the first thing you're going to see pretty much any time you go in there. It's a little bit different kind of calendar because it shows the different occasions in the church year. Now, I'm going to go through a very practical example for you. Let's see, about, I don't know, 10 days or so, I've been asked to fill in at a church. It's a small congregation. Last time I was there, there's 8 other people besides me and my family, and it was my first time doing this sort of pulpit supply work. And it was a lot of fun, but I didn't know exactly what to expect in terms of the order of service and everything else. The pastor let me know that he was going to have a bulletin waiting for me. Well, now I know what to expect, and I like to be prepared. So we're going to kind of walk through this process of me preparing for 10 days from now, which means I need to jump ahead. So because of the way the calendar falls, we always show 5 weeks, starting with the first week. So I'm going to be preaching on January 30th, which doesn't show up under January. It was a little quirk that I found out. It actually shows up if I click February. So this is Epiphany 4, or the 4th Sunday after Epiphany, that's what we call it. You can see when I click on that holiday, it takes me to the propers view. And first off, right off the bat, I've been doing this throughout the year, whether I'm serving as liturgist or preacher or whatever, it's so handy to go and view the propers just from going on this view. And I should clarify, all of this is available in the free trial. I haven't had to subscribe yet, so you can sign up, you can see this, you can use this indefinitely. And I recommend all my classmates do too at this time because it's so helpful to go and see these readings right here. In fact, all the propers. So you can see there's the different options for the readings, the Old Testament readings. We've got 2 choices, the Psalm, we've got 2 choices there, whether we go 6 or 11 verses. We've got the 1 Corinthians is our epistle. We get into 1 Corinthians 13, all about love. And I'm not sure if I want to preach about that or the gospel. I love preaching on the gospels, obviously. And there's so much here for this Luke reading. This is when Jesus is coming into Capernaum, when he heals Peter's mother-in-law. There's so many cool things there. So I'm leaning towards preaching on Luke 4. But you can see just how quickly you can get to this. And it's also readily available on your mobile device. This is a view that we've really optimized for mobile. All right, so we're here at propers. If you don't have a proper for that day, so let's say you've got some special service coming up. A very common one would be a funeral. It's maybe during the middle of the week, you're not tied to the church year in the same way that you might on Sunday morning. All you have to do is click on any day. So let's say it's Thursday, February 3rd. You click on that date and it will kind of walk you through setting up the service. So you can say, well, here are the available holidays that have different propers for it. But maybe you're just going to go straight to funeral. And maybe you want to title it, Mr. Smith's funeral, so that you can kind of separate it out. When you go and plan that service, you can go click on propers for this funeral and see there's nothing there. It's just the funeral plan for that. But the order of service is in place. So I just wanted to call that out because that's one of the kind of hidden features on the calendar view. Not really hidden, we just don't put it front and center. All right, let me go back here to Epiphany 4 because we're going to plan this one out. Just wanted to call your attention to funeral services. So in the top right, I clicked plan this service. I should have shown you that. See up here on the top right, plan this service. And this will now add another tab here. So I still have my propers view, but now I have my service plan tab. And it kind of summarizes the readings with just the references. Now, if I wanted to do a different reading, maybe we didn't want to do the whole thing, or like you can see here, we had two options for Jeremiah, 4 to 10 or 4 to 19. We talked about the Psalm. If I wanted to change that, all I have to do is click on that reading and toggle between them. It shows me the potential readings for that. Or if I wanted to do something different entirely, John 1, 1 through 10, something like that. If I click that, it'll actually show me how it breaks down that reading. So you never stop at verse 10, apparently. So you may want to do 1 through 14. You could do something like that. All right, but we're going to go with the assigned readings for the week. And then we're going to go to hymns. Now, when I click on hymns, you can see there's a number of hymn suggestions. Now, I'm not actually planning the hymns for this service. The pastor has said he'll take care of that. So I don't have to worry about that. But if I did, of course, I'd probably use the hymn of the day. Then I'd go to add another hymn. Now, I've got two different breakdowns. I've got hymns for readings and other suggested hymns. The hymns for the readings are tied to the propers for the day. So if I change out the readings, it's still going to show those same hymns because it's going to be looking for the propers. And maybe labeling that, we could call it hymns for the proper readings, but we didn't want to complicate it too much. One of the neat things you can see is next to the hymns, of course, you've got the hymn number, but you've got this little icon next to it. So this one, charity, where charity and love prevail. It says 9 months. When I click on that, it says last used 9 months before this service, and it tells me May 2nd for the 5th Sunday of Easter. So you can kind of get an idea of whether you've been using this hymn a lot or if it's a brand new hymn. I know many churches will have kind of a set collection of hymns. There's over 600 in Lutheran Service Book, and you're not going to go through all of those because some of them are a little difficult to learn. But you might have a collection of 60, 70, 80, maybe more than that that you kind of cycle through. And this will let you know if it's one of those or if it's a new one. Now, I mentioned the readings aspect of that. Let me go ahead and show you the preview panel. Up in the top right, there's this little Show High Preview button. When you click on that, you get all sorts of information about the hymn. You still have your search results here, but now you can see the text of it. You could see it with the melody. If you can't read music, I can't read music at all. None of this makes sense to me. There's a little play button up here. And I'm not sure if my audio is up enough. Let me turn it up a little bit. You're going to hear a chime, pardon me. There we go. Let's go ahead and play. All right, that one I know very well. I sang that one in a choir in college under the direction of Dr. Ken Koshi. And this is one of the ones where you hit those high notes and I could not hit them. And he very kindly let me know. So this hymn has a personal meaning to that. All right, so we've got the info tab, which is just fantastic. Thinking back to when Bob Lale created this all the way back in 2006 when he was in seminary, one of the things he wanted to be able to do was to take scripture text and find the related hymns, or scripture topics and find it. Now, we have print resources here at CPH that do that, but having it in a database that's quickly searchable is far better, because you can see that. Not only do you have the authors and the text authors, you can see here's where the tune came from. You can see who, copyright information, tune name, meter, key, all that fun music stuff that I don't know much about. But you've got related topics, and you've got the related scripture tied into the different stanzas. And then you can see which days in the church year it's suggested for. Now, anytime you see this blue text, that is a link. And so if you click on one of these, we'll just click on related topic, forgiveness. It will change your search up here. Excuse me, pardon me. It'll change your search up here to have that same criteria. So you can learn over time what exactly you might type in. So like here's topic. If I just type in topic : you can see all the available topics that are there. And as you start typing them, so we had forgiveness, it'll pre-fill, and if you just click tab, it'll complete it. You hit enter, and it'll show you all the hymns for forgiveness. Now, in the same way, you can type in the text reference. And so Luke 4, I believe, is what we were looking at. And so we'll do a search for that. I should clarify, because I'm under hymns right now, it's filtering it automatically by hymns, but you can do this with any kind of elements. And then you can see where it's tied to it. So Luke 4 is obviously more than just our reading, but when we click on this individual one, Lord, throughout these 40 days, and this is a Lent hymn, you can see that related topics Lent. Well, stanza 1 is really tied into Luke 4, 1 through 13. So when we look at the text, you say, oh Lord, throughout these 40 days, you prayed and kept the fast. This is talking about Jesus praying. That's part of that reading. So you'll have to kind of sift through it and see where those connections are. Sometimes it's surprising. Sometimes it's not even tied to a specific stanza, but the general theme works with that text. So it's super powerful. In some ways, it's almost too much information if you're just starting out, if you're not as familiar with the hymns. But as you become more familiar with it, you'll start to see, oh, I know why that's showing up there. Or you just look in through here and see, okay, there it is. Oh, stanza 3 is also tied into that. Yeah, parched and hungry, you prayed. So as you go through here, you're selecting your hymns. I'm not going to go with that Lent hymn yet. We'll just do a few of these other ones. And I'm not giving too much thought to it. I should also show you topic. If you type in, and sometimes it's a little slow, beginning of service, like what should our opening hymn be? Well, if you look through here, there you go. There's some opening hymns or beginning of the service hymns that are especially appropriate. So it's not just like church year or other things. So have fun exploring through there. You'll be surprised at the kind of things that you can see. All right, go back in, we'll add one more. Now, these are our hymns for our plan. Remember, this is the service plan. That's not saying we're definitely going to use them. So maybe you go through and put 8 or 10 that you're considering, and then you narrow it down later on. All right, we've got order of service. We'll come back to hymns when we're in the bulletin. Order of service, you can see all of the different orders of service that are provided with Lutheran Service Book. There's, of course, the Divine Service with 5 different settings. Last time I was at the church, we used Divine Service Setting 1. I'm going to go with that today because I'm very familiar with it. Now, you can also add additional rites. So if you have like a baptism, which I'm not going to have, but I am going to add here right now to show you what it might look like. You've got all these other rites. And not only does it give you the content for those rites, so you don't have to go searching in the agenda, but it'll tell you where to put it in the service, or at least where it's recommended to go, and if you're making any other changes. So I like to show baptism right from the beginning because it shows up right at the top, right at the beginning of the service. Lastly, before we get to the bulletin, I'm going to highlight notes. Notes are just an open text field. Sometimes I get questions like, well, what am I supposed to type in here? You can type whatever you want. You can say guest preacher, seminarian, no communion, something like that. And so if you are the pastor and you're planning this, you can let the office administrator know, or the organist know that, all right, you're not going to be having any communion hymns today, so you don't have to prepare for that because we're not doing communion because pastor's not here. So you could do things like that in those notes, but you don't have to type anything if you don't want to. All right, so there we have it. That is our service plan. Now let's actually put together the service. So in the top right, you can see prepare bulletin, prepare presentation, and prepare playlist. I'll touch on those last two very briefly at the end. So prepare bulletin. There we go. The first thing you see is the order of service. The second thing you see are some red and green sections. You see, this is because we had suggested a rite that we were going to do holy baptism. Now you can see the green means insert the rite here. By doing that, it will also remove everything in the red. It is suggested in the agenda that you remove confession and absolution and the hymn of invocation if you have a baptism to begin the service. Sorry, I'm jumping my mouse around quite a bit. You don't have to do that, but this is just taking the rules that are in the agenda or the suggestions that are in the agenda and making it easy to do. But I'm going to go ahead and X out of this right now because that's not the goal for today. The goal for today is to create a bulletin for that Sunday that I, as a seminarian, can lead. So let's kind of take a look through this. Up in the top, you've got our document, which has our bulletin format, which we'll get into in a bit, and our order of service. Then you have some tools in this ribbon. You'll notice that it looks a lot like a word processor. That's kind of intentional. We wanted to create a familiar tool. It doesn't work exactly like a word processor, but at least you know where to go to look for things. So here, if you're going to go and insert an element, you've got all sorts of options here, and I'll talk through some of those. You see this first one where it says confession and absolution. That's a heading. You could have other headings here. Then you've got hymn of invocation. Well, not surprisingly, that's a hymn. You've got hymn over here that you can add in. And then you've got some rubrics. These are italicized in this format. You can always add a rubric in somewhere else. Now, because I clicked insert, you can see all these lines show up where I can drag and drop things in. So if I was putting another rubric, see insert rubric, and I want to put it right here, I could do that. And there's a rubric. Well, now I've got this new element here and it's auto-selected. You can see up at the top it says rubric. I can click on any of these elements to see what kind of element it is. So here is our invocation. Here is our exhortation. Now, the way that the Lutheran Service Book puts it together, it doesn't have any titles for those or captions. So you wouldn't know that just by looking at it unless you understand Lutheran worship or you clicked on it. So maybe your visitors don't know about that and you want to tell them what you're doing. Well, you can just go over here to this option. This is caption and click that on. And so you've got invocation there, and then you have exhortation there, and then you've got some more rubrics. So you've got these different options. You don't have to show everything. The default in this format is what the hymnal has, but you can change it however you like. All right, so we'll go and take those off again. I'm going to delete this additional rubric. I wanted to show you something else. Oops. Delete that rubric. There we go. You can drag and drop things too. You don't have to use the ribbon tools. It's for inserting ribbons, but you can drag and drop. You can right click and delete. You can change it just by double clicking on it. So maybe you want to be more polite and say, please stand as you are able. Something like that. You can just type in there. In fact, maybe you don't call it hymn of invocation. Maybe you call it opening hymn or entrance hymn. Maybe that's how you do it at your church. Whatever you want to change, go ahead and make those changes, because at the very end, we're going to save this so that you don't have to make those changes next time you have this order of service. All right, let's go down a little bit, show you some of the tools in here. Actually, entrance hymn, before I go too far. Over on the far right, you've got that same kind of selection that you saw in the service plan. But those hymns you selected in the service plan now show up at the very top. You still have hymn of the day, hymns for the reading, other suggested hymns, but the ones you've thought about already or somebody else has thought about on your team are showing up right at the top. And so you could select that and it puts it in right away. There you go. So where charity and love prevail, that one where I can't hit the notes. There's 6 stanzas there right from the beginning. Maybe you don't want 6 stanzas. Maybe you only want, 4 of them, and you want stanzas 1, 3, 5, and 6. If I go ahead and select those, oops, there we go, just a little bit slow because I'm presenting live. It goes down to just those 4 stanzas. Maybe you say, well, that's great, Peter, but my people can hit those notes. I want them to see the melody. Well, just click this formatting button up here under entrance hymn, melody, and there it shows up. And you'll notice it's removed stanzas 2 and 4 and formatted it very nicely without those 2 stanzas. You see, all of these are individual images, and if you wanted to add them in, you could do that. If you want to take out 5, you can change those around. Now, if you select all of them, it's going to put the first 4 with the music and the last 2 separately. So it will max out at 5 on your actual melody, but it usually, if you have additional ones, it'll cut it down to 4, so you're not having 5 and 1. That's just the logic we use. But if you go down to 5, there you go. It's all under the melody. All right, let's keep going because I could talk about these things all day. If you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I see there's a number of them that are showing up, so that's great. All right, now as we go through here, you'll see some blue spots here, these blue lines with an arrow. Those are option groups. These are options that are presented with this order of service. Now let's click on this one. This is the absolution. Well, those of you who know Lutheran worship know that seminarians should not say this, because one of the things is, as a called and ordained servant of Christ. I am neither called nor ordained yet, so I won't be using this one. But let me put the caption on so you can see it. When I click the drop down, you can see that this one's absolution, but oops, if I go to the second one, and then I got to turn the caption on that because it's technically different. It's the declaration of grace. So this one, there we go, is absolution. That one's declaration of grace. So those are 2 different options that you can use. And as a seminarian, I know that I go with the declaration of grace. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. And I don't have to confuse people. I can just remove that caption. And then I probably would just delete this heading. Just again, for those who are paying attention, well, seminarians can't absolve sins. Well, in the priesthood of all believers, we can, but in this order of service, we're going with the declaration of grace. So you see there that I've just modified this to fit the needs of the service. I haven't had to retype everything. I haven't had to go search or change what it's said in there. I can just select it and keep going on. All right, there's the service of the word. We move into this. Now, as you look here, there's a few more option groups. So there's the introit, or I could go with the psalm. Make those different choices. I've got the Kyrie, Gloria, and Excelsis, or we could sing This is the Feast. Either one of those is fine. One thing I learned in worship class, that this is not just for communion Sundays or non-communion Sundays. Apparently there's thoughts of both of those. You can use it at any time. There's my Old Testament reading. Now, if I go with the psalm up here rather than the introit, then I probably don't need the psalm down here. You can see in the option group, I could just switch to the gradual. Keep going down. There's the Alleluia and verse. As we are getting into Lent, which sometimes this falls into, we could choose that. Verse of the day. Just go with that without the singing. we've got different options there. Now, as you look here, based on the way that the bulletin or the hymnal says it, we've got this, what we call a template around there. The Holy Gospel according to St. Luke, the 4th chapter. We don't have anything at the beginning of the epistle. If we wanted to, you could use one of these. So let's see, we've got introduction epistle. So I could put that in there and say the epistle is from 1 Corinthians chapter 12. You know, I might just be able to say that without having it written out. It's not that hard. But if you wanted to quickly add that in, we've got these different templates that surround it. There's more that you can do with that. I just want to call your attention to that right here. All right, now we go down. We've got another hymn of the day and then the sermon. Well, let me go back a little bit. At my church, and I know that not every church does this, but at my church we have a children's message right before the Old Testament reading. And if we didn't do this, my kids would be upset. So we probably should put that in. It gives me a great way to show you how to add in a custom element. So I'm going to go ahead and click Insert here, and then go back up there, right before the Old Testament reading, and I'm just going to add a caption right there. And all I'm going to do is say children's message. If I wanted to add a subcaption, I can say something there like all children 12 and under are invited to come to the front. Something like that. If I wanted to, it's that easy to add it in. Now, one of the benefits is that it matches all the formatting. The other thing is if I'm saving this as a customer order of service, I'll never have to type that again. I don't have to remember to add it into the bulletin at the end. If I wanted to remove it, it's a lot easier to remove it than to add it. So I'll put that in there. All right, we'll go down a little bit more. There's the sermon. If I wanted to put in the title over here, which I don't have a sermon title yet, but I could put that in since I still don't know exactly what I'm preaching on. You can put that in right there. You could put the scripture reference if you wanted. You can use that for whatever's best for your church. All right, we've got the different creed option groups there. There's the Nicene, the Apostles' Creed, Athanasian Creed. Can you imagine if I was Pulpit Supply and I chose Athanasian Creed for a non-Trinity Sunday? That probably wouldn't go over very well. All right, Apostles' Creed, we'll go with that. Now the next one, this is one of these, I don't know, more insider tips. There's probably better ways of making this apparent, but this is one of those things where you either want it or you don't. Prayer of the church. Now, of course, we all want the prayer of the church. We should all crave prayers every day. But what I'm talking about, the prayer of the church that is published by the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. You may or may not know about this, but they post this on their website. And it's a way for the prayer of the church to be the same collection of prayers across the church. There's a lot of unity that goes with that. Well, we take those prayers when we get them from Synod and we put them in a format that you can add to Service Builder. And since we moved online, we made it really easy. You can actually subscribe to this for free and have it automatically placed there. Let me show you that real quick. This is especially for those of you who are already using Service Builder. So I should have said this before, services auto-save. So I've been doing work, it's saved. I don't have to click anything when I click out of the screen. But I'm going to go up here to Settings and go to Account Settings. And I'm going to scroll down here. And under Content Subscription, I've got three options. We're going to talk about the Let Us Pray. Let Us Pray is the name of the prayers of the church from the LCMS. And I'm going to say include it in search and include automatically and click Save. So now that I have subscribed to this, it takes me back to my service. I will go down to the prayer of the church. Now, because I already started this service, it doesn't insert it automatically, even though I checked the box. But this is a work in progress. In the future, it'll automatically put it in. So when I go in here, I can go and see, all right, there's Let Us Pray for Epiphany 4. So I click on it. There's actually two of them. They've got two different ones there, and they do that sometimes, not always. But yeah, it looks like they're tied in with the different readings. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this first one. It's typed out the entire prayer of the church for me and put it in the right format of pastor and congregation. I'll show you how to edit some things in just a few moments if I wanted to change that to, you know, assisting minister or presiding minister. You know, those are the different options with that. But it's already in there. I didn't have to type out all of that. It's just there and ready to go. So talk about time savings, like that's one of my favorite ones. That's completely free. And like I said, you can subscribe to it and have it automatically insert or just show it in the search results like I just showed you there. All right, watching my time. I got a few more things to do, so I'm going to go down farther. All right, we've got the offertory and then the service of the sacrament. Remember, I'm not a pastor, so I can't oversee this. So I'm going to remove it from this service. So I'm going to go through and just remove the different elements. They're all individual, which might make that, you know, a little annoying to have to do each one. But I'm doing this once. So we'll change the group. All right. Few more things. I remove the group distribution. We'll look at some of these in just a second. All right, that. So everybody's already standing still. Not standing still, but still standing. There we go. All right, so they're probably sitting for the offertory. No. They're sitting for offering and then standing for offertory. Now, one thing I don't have that I removed as part of the communion service is now the Lord's Prayer. So we'll end with that. So I'm going to go ahead and click Insert Prayer right here after Prayer of the Church. There we go. And let's see. So we've got the collect. I should have added that earlier. I'm going to type in Lord's Prayer. Oops. Yeah, the search is always a little bit slow when I present live. Hopefully I typed that in right. It's hard not to see it. There's always a delay. So we will search for that real quick. You can see there's a lot of options. There's really only one Lord's Prayer, of course, but there's lots of options in terms of how you introduce it, in terms of its formatting. Sometimes you can have it put in, yeah, see like that one. That has it in italics. All sorts of different ones. We're just going to go with Divine Service Setting 1 as planned. And I'm going to remove the passing of the peace because it's COVID. All right. So as we go down here, you can see that I'm almost done. I haven't added all my hymns in there, but that's okay. The one thing I wanted to show you was this Benediction, because this is one where, and I checked this beforehand, the hymnal doesn't have options for you. By practice, seminarians are not supposed to use the second person you, but the first person plural us. And so, you know, when you say the Lord bless you and keep you, you should instead say the Lord bless us and keep us. Well, because the hymnal doesn't have that option, that is not one of the, that's not a selection group. And I can go here, and I believe this one from morning prayer has one with us in it, but it's not the exact same. But I wanted to show you just an easy way of modifying this. All I have to do is right click and click edit. It's going to make this a custom element. In fact, I can even call this Benediction Seminarian. And when I go in here, I can just go in and say, the Lord bless us and keep us. It's just a text editor with a few extra options. Be gracious to us, the Lord look upon us with favor and give us peace. There you go. I'll click save. In fact, actually, I'm going to change this over here to maybe leader as opposed to pastor. Click save. And I may want to do that for the other ones. That'll take a little bit of time to do all of those. And we're all about time savings. That one will take a little bit more time this time. All right, I've saved that. I'll close this. And you see it has automatically updated it there. Not only that, but I'll be able to use that other times now too. Now, I made a number of changes. I haven't finished all of this, but I'm going to go up here to Document. And you'll see here right now I have Order of Service Setting 1. If I click Save, there's a little plus button next to it. It adds my to the front of it. I might just say Divine Service Setting 1, Seminarian, and click Save. Well, now I can use this same order of service another time. So if I go back up to my calendar, let's say I'm preaching the following week, Epiphany 5. And I go in here to plan my service, order of service. If I go down to the bottom, I have my orders of service. I've got it uncategorized. I could always add a category. But if I put the seminarian one, now when I go to prepare the bulletin next time, it's got all of those changes, but it doesn't keep the hymns. It saves my rubric changes, as you can see, but it puts in the new propers too. So there we go. We've got King Uzziah now in the Old Testament reading. As we go down to the gospel, now we've got him calling the disciples. As you go down farther here, we still have that benediction that's appropriate. So all of those changes that I made for this service, which were pretty easy to change, are now all waiting for me for the next time. So that's where my custom order of service, my divine service, or different orders of service that you can save as. You start with a baseline, you make your changes, and then you can use it again and again. But you're not saving that service, you're saving that order of service. So all the propers and things that change week to week will still be able to change. Now there's a lot more you can do there. I don't have the time today to go through all of that, but that gives you just kind of a taste of some of those things. Let's go back to the service that we've been working on, Fourth Sunday, and go back to prepare bulletin, and it takes me right back to where I was. Now, if we look here, there's my default format. That may not be how I like to operate. Like, I might want some different changes. I've done some of these ahead of time. Call my church Resurrection Lutheran Church. Change it to a different one. I've got regular print there. You can see I have red rubrics, which kind of works out nicely. I've got a different font. I've got a number of options as we go through here that kind of change the formatting for it. When I have done this, this is all done through Bulletin Formats. I click the edit button next to Bulletin Formats. I'll show that. You see my default format looks like this. My custom format has changed a number of things. I've gone through and I've changed these different sections, these styles, to be the font Lato or Lato. I don't know how you pronounce it exactly. I pronounce it Lato. In my layout, I've changed it to be a legal size document that's folded in half. So that 8.5 by 14, whereas my default was an 8.5 by 11 portrait. So printed out in full. You can tell the difference there with that preview alone. Now my content has some defaults. I show all the headings, I show all the rubrics. My rubric has a different style, which is on that other tab. I show the music for all the hymns. I show the stanza numbers, although I don't have to. I can uncheck that and that's for text only. I should have shown that before. Under my liturgy elements, I've got I set them to default to text, but I show the Bible references. There's all sorts of things you can do there. You see the little tooltip that shows it. I use symbols for speakers right now. Maybe I want to use text, pastor, congregation, all of that. That would allow me, if I do it that way, that when I export it, all I have to do is do a copy replace for pastor to leader or liturgist or something like that. So there's some different options there. These formats, when you save them, it saves it so that you can reuse them again and again. So let's look at this large print one. It's very similar to my regular print. It's just larger, as you might expect. It's the same size. Now maybe I want to do ledger size, 11 by 17 for that. So it's a bigger font, a bigger piece of paper. I'll save that. So I create the service once. We'll go through here, regular print. And then I export it. So I go there, export, and it now gives me a Word document. Do that, and then I'm going to change my format to large print and do another Word document. Exports there. And I'll open both of those up and show them side by side. It may take me a second to move it side by side. It's opening up on my other monitor, so we'll wait for that to process. There, that one, and there's this one. There you go, you should be able to see it. It's a downloaded file, so editing was not enabled initially. Oops, and there you go. Click enable editing. So now you can see it side by side. Let me show all of that. There you go. That's pretty close. I don't know why that view, yeah, print layout. There, that's what I was going for. You can see them. So on the left hand is my regular size bulletin, and on the right hand is my large print bulletin. And you don't have to look at the details to see that the page breaks are different, but it's all the same service. So I very quickly printed out the same thing without having to go in and adjust the fonts and all of that. You know, one thing that I may have probably been better off doing is changing on the large print the hymns to all be text rather than melody, but they still print out and it still stretches accordingly. So you've got a number of different ways you can change the formatting. So you plan your service once and export it and get both of your bulletins. All right, again, just scratching the surface on that. Let me go over here real quick to prepare presentation. So up in the top right, we've got all of our different options: propers, service plan, bulletin, prepare presentation. When I go to this one, it takes me to the same service, but now it's ready for a slide deck or presentation. I found that most of my classmates have no idea what a slide deck is. So I guess that's just marketer speak or something. But that's what I call it. If I go here though, you can see on all of these, they're kind of broken up. One slide for each element. That's to make it really easy to keep everybody's focus. But the style leaves a lot to be desired, this format. So I have a few formats that I've made. This one is a basic one that looks a little bit better. But like if I go here to basic modern, this has a different font, different colors. I can go to teal gray, a little bit different. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing, pardon me. My liturgy is a whole different topic, how you manage it. Yeah, it looks like I'm missing some fonts on my computer. You can also add images if you want. Doesn't look like I've uploaded the image on this one, but this would be one with a green background. So you have all sorts of different ones, yeah. It's been a little while. I think I did these all on a different computer. There's one with the image. That works better. Zoom in on that. This is one of our digital paraments that we sell with a different product called Creative Worship. So you've got different options. Again, I'm just touching on that very briefly. The other thing that you saw up there was playlist. That's a discussion for another time, but playlist allows you to export MP3 files of all of the music. So if you don't have an organist, but you have a sound system, you could export these. They're all recorded in high quality format on the organ, and you can play them over your sound system. Again, a different discussion for a different time, but I wanted to give you a little bit of a highlight. All right, I am 4 minutes over my presentation time. I apologize for that, and I have a couple things to show you still. So we've got a number of questions, which is just great. We'll get to those in just a few minutes, but I want to talk through licenses a little bit, just to kind of clarify what all this is. We'll get into pricing very quickly. But just to clarify, there's 3 different kinds of licenses. There's our trial license, which allows you to do, well, we'll get into that. 3 different licenses: trial, software license, and hymn license. I have a slide for the trial license. Might as well show that. The trial license gives you read-only access to everything in Builder. You also get the ability to plan services. So you can do pretty much everything I did except for export. That's the one thing you can't do. The great thing is that there's no time limit. You could do this forever if you wanted. If you have a different format that you use, maybe you're doing things really fancy in like Adobe InDesign, and you just need help like getting kind of planning it out, figuring out what's going in there, and you're going to retype things. Well, you can do that with just the trial. You won't have the ability to export, but everything else. And the reason we don't give you the option to export is you also don't have the right to use it. Like if you're not paying for it through us, then you've got to pay for it somewhere. And so there's other options out there, but we're not going to let you shoot yourself in the foot legally and allow you to export content that you don't have the right to use. Now, when you sign up for the software license, you still have full access to the software, but full access means exporting too. Gives you the right to print and use the liturgy. It also gives you the right to print and use public domain hymns. That's kind of the exception. Now, there's a lot of public domain hymns in there, but there's also a lot of copyrighted hymns. We'll talk about that in a moment. But it also gives you the right to stream and upload video recordings of the content you have the right to print. We've merged all of our licenses into this one. So anytime you have the right to print, you also have the right to stream it. Now, this is unique to Lutheran Service Builder. So if you're using other licenses, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have both the right to print and to stream, but we've tied them all together. Now, the software license has some different pricing on here for your first year compared to subsequent years. There's an initial year fee of $250 in addition to what you normally pay year in, year out. The reason for that is that first-year users have far more questions for our support team, and the support is included with your license. So we just kind of front-load it a little bit. There's also some work on our end getting you set up. So that's why you have the first year, $250 extra fee, but then your subsequent years are quite a bit less. Now the hymn license is for using those copyrighted hymns. You can have the hymn license, but if you don't have the software license, you can't use Service Builder. If you have the hymn license without Service Builder, you have the rights to use the hymns, but you got to figure out how to get them into your bulletin yourself. But that's why 90% of our customers have both the software and the hymn license. Might even be more than 90% now. Gives you the right to reprint most hymns. There's a few exceptions. I think it's 2 from a printing standpoint, like 10 from a streaming standpoint. Our license agreement covers all that. So yeah, rights to stream and upload video recordings of those hymns too. Now the hymn license doesn't have any additional fees in the first year. It's pretty straightforward, 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the size of your church. Most of you fit within that $100 range based on what our attendance numbers were in our poll. So this is what it looks like from a package deal. Your first year software, your hymn license. So for the majority of you, it'd be about $550 for your first year, $300 a year after that. Now, I know, especially if you're a church of under 200, that's a pretty hefty price tag. As you get to larger churches, you have more fund opportunities there. But I know if you are a small congregation saying, this is going to cost us $550 or $300 every year after that, that's a tough sell to some church councils. I used to lead a church council that was a little bit bigger, and I know that even for that larger size church council, this would have been a tough thing to swallow. But I like to put it into perspective. If you look at it for the first year pricing, your weekly, divide by 52, that's $10.58 a week. Your second year is $5.77 a week. So when you think about whoever's preparing the bulletin and how much time savings that they'll have, maybe it's 15 minutes, maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's an hour, 2 hours of time savings. It depends on how much time you're spending doing it now. How does that compare to saving $10 a week or spending $10 a week, spending $5.77 a week? Think about it in those terms. I mean, $5.77 a week is about the size of a larger coffee from Starbucks once a week. Now, if you're a small congregation in a rural area, you may not be going to Starbucks once a week. But again, put it into perspective. Is it worth your time, the time savings with that little bit? Now, as I think about me going out into a congregation in a little over 2 years and the time savings, I know I would be willing to pay this out of my own pocket if my church can't afford it. I don't recommend that. Like, churches should be able to support church workers' times by doing things like this, but hopefully this helps put it into perspective a little bit. All right, again, you can start your free trial, your endless free trial at LutheranServiceBuilder.com. We do have support options along the way. If you are a paying customer, you can use our online help center. Actually, our online help centers, even if you're not paying. But our in-app chat, our support email address, and our phone number, those are for paying customers. But it just shows you the many options you have to get help on Lutheran Service Builder. We're going to move into our question and answer time. I'm right at an hour, so I apologize. I went a little bit long, but I'll stick around to answer all the questions. If you can't stick around, just know that this is being recorded, so you can get your answers then too. So you can type your questions into the GoToWebinar chat, as many of you have already done. Remember, you don't have to ask this question. A recording will be shared within 48 hours. And if you're watching that recording and you have questions, you can reach out to our support team. You saw my email before. I'm happy to answer your questions. A lot of the times, if I get them, I'm going to send them to our support team because they're better off equipped to handle some of the questions, and they'll be quicker. So I recommend that you contact our support team. As much as I love talking to customers, my time is so limited these days, it's a little bit hard to get to them. So I recommend contacting our support team. So let's go ahead. I'm going to move these questions over here now so that I can see them. And I'll probably jump into Builder a few times as we go through here. So Dwayne is saying many hymns are still unavailable to use in Service Builder. When will they be available? Now I know, Dwayne, I've been working with you with one of our other products that's just like Service Builder. There's work on that where more hymns will become available. When we're thinking about like Lutheran Service Builder and the hymns that are in there, it's a pretty small list. I know for our friends in Wells, it's a little bit larger list, but that is in progress. So Dwayne, I know you're in the Wells group. That's in progress. It's all a copyrights issue, and our partners are working on securing those rights. So Dwayne also asked, it's difficult to prepare a service without Lord's Supper. I'm unable to end this find the end of the service prayers in the non-communion ending. Some of this just comes into how you search. I can't get into all those specific because I know you're working off of a different hymnal. I saw another question or a comment later on in here from somebody who, yeah, remove post-communion collect. Joe mentioned that. I was going to go back up and look at that in here. I love the line that I am given as a seminarian, where I'm only a seminarian. We get to use that at our fieldwork church a lot. Like, I'm still learning. Please be patient with me. So I think, yeah, there we go. Thank you for asking or suggesting I remove that. So as you go in here at the end of service, getting back to Dwayne's question, if you're removing the communion service, you've got go and click in and add prayers here. So insert prayers. You can see the different suggestions or just browse all prayers. If you know where it's coming from, like here, this is all from Lutheran Service Builder, but your service book, you can go through and see these different categories. The other thing you could do is you could copy and paste from elsewhere or insert a custom element. There's so many different options there in terms of which prayer you're looking for. I don't want to get into the details right now, but that's how you would do it. You have access to all the prayers that are in there. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding them in the right way. And so your different search terms will go into that. You'd like to start with hashtag prayers, and then you can type in different search criteria. So I hope that helps. I know that doesn't answer it exactly, but that's kind of the strategy you would take for doing that. So you'd go and insert a prayer element and then search for that. All right, so another question, how do you add a cover page, intro page, an announcement page at the end of the service? Those are not in Service Builder because this is about your order of service. However, what most of our customers do is they have, if they're doing that as part of their bulletin, if it's not a separate document, they have a template that's in Word, and they'll export their service out, and then they'll copy paste it into their template. And then they can modify that. So that's what we recommend doing. We don't support images or other things like that. We're looking at different options. This is Service Builder, not Bulletin Builder. Bulletin has that idea of announcements and images and other things, those who are serving. That's just kind of outside the scope of Service Builder. But there are ways of doing that using other templates. All right, next up, can you add readings that aren't already set? In other words, whatever verses you type in. That's from Joel, and you're right, absolutely. So if we go here, let's see. Yeah, I'll go here, insert reading, put this right there, and let's say I wanted to do John 1 through 14. I can just type that in. I could have done that in my service plan. Put that in here. And there you have it. And then I can change my template to be, where is it? Gospel. And I can change this to just say Holy Gospel, something like that. So you can do that all from the same place, or you can do that from your service plan and add that in. Joel is also asking, what if there's not a melody player in there? Now, I know that for most of our hymns, it's in there, if not all of our hymns. If you're using the Wells version, those are still in progress. Some have been added, some are still being worked on. If you're adding your own custom hymns to this, which is kind of advanced, we cover that in other trainings, you can upload your own melody. So if the play button is not showing there, and I'll show what play button I'm referring to over here. Yeah, right there, that play button. If that's not showing, then depends on your service builder. It may be added soon, or it may just, if it's custom hymns, still need to be uploaded. All right. Gerald is saying, worship planning book suggests which reading the suggested hymn is related to. Is there a way to see this without going through each suggested hymn? Not at this time, although we've been talking about adding something right in this area that breaks it down by reading. So we don't have that in there yet, but that would address exactly what you're asking for. And so I'll put another flag in our system of feedback to say, yeah, Gerald would find that helpful, because I think it's going to be helpful. We've got lots of suggestions, and it's just a matter of getting through the different ones to figure out what makes the most sense to do now. All right, selection of hymns and songs not in LSB. How is that done? David is asking that. That gets into a little bit more advanced, but I'll give you a quick preview of that. We've got some recorded webinars that walk you through that. If you go up here under settings, I see your second question is related to that as well. You go to My Worship Resources and then My Hymns. When you get into My Hymns, like here's one that I've done for a different setting or different training webinar. You can basically add a hymn down here, and then you can set up your different stanzas, paste in the text. You can even upload an image of the melody and splice it. This is a different version of the melody. Well, it's a different image, a little bit higher. Once you put this in, you can add all of the other things like topics, scripture, copyright information, and save it, and then reuse it time and time again. I didn't add copyright information for everything, apparently. So you can add in your own hymns under My Hymns, and then they're just available like any other hymn. So you have to go through the work of doing that. Although one of the things that I haven't shown yet is the ability to share things. So like here, as Stone on Living Stone is set, there's this little button up here on the right. This is a copy to share this hymn. If other people have added hymns, they can go here, copy to share that link with you. You can bring it into your Builder account, and then it's going to ask you the same kind of copyright information. You have to say you have the right to use it. Just because it's in Builder doesn't mean you have the right to use it if it's a custom hymn. But if you have a different license, you'd be able to use it. And so they're doing the work, or you're doing the work of sharing it. So you can build out a network of people who are using this and share the different hymns or other songs. I know that sometimes people make distinctions between hymns and songs, but you get the idea. So these kind of tools are there to then just build up your library of music. So I hope that helps, David. Kurt's saying, let's see, feature suggestion, unless I just don't know how to do it. I wish the text view for hymns could do multiple columns. That way hymns with 6+ stanzas don't take up as much space. That is a really good suggestion. I can tell you from working with different Word publishers like Microsoft Word, having columns when the whole document isn't columns is a little bit difficult. In fact, do I still have it open? Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have the exact option here. In Word, if you did a layout where you're doing columns, like if I just try to put this in 2 columns, that works out pretty well, but you can see how it's kind of broken in there. So that's the quick way of doing it, knowing that it doesn't work perfectly every time. Now, as we build Builder, we have to export it in a programming language that Microsoft Word or other word processors can understand. That's one of the difficult ones. So if we were to do it, it might look like this, where you'd have to go and tweak it manually. And so that's why we don't do that right now. But I'll add it as a suggestion, because there's a number of different ways to program. As I like to say, you can program anything with time and money. It just doesn't always make the most sense because of the time or the money. So that's a great suggestion though, Kurt. I'll put that in because something like that might be a little bit easier than some of our other things. All right, so David S. follow-up. So in general way, how are items from outside LSB imported for use while developing the bulletin? Hopefully that quick look showed it to you. While we're talking on this, I should show you something else. If you go to, and I'll pull this up on my screen, resources.concordiatechnology.org, Resource Center. We have all sorts of helpful things. Underneath software, Lutheran Service Builder, we've got some recorded webinars. This one under here called Training Webinar Session 4, My Worship Resources and Other Add-ins, goes through that in detail. There's a lot of different options for bringing in other elements. Creative worship being one where we compile different ideas for you. My Worship Resources, where you bring in your own things or things from third parties that we don't have the rights to distribute, but you might have the rights to use. So that's what I would recommend doing that. And in fact, I can go ahead and put this exact link in the chat. It's probably gonna start playing on me. There you go. I'll share this. This is a fantastic webinar for people looking to get a little more advanced. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? Melody for sung liturgical portions, insertable through use of melody taskbar. Yeah, I should have shown that in more detail. Let me go over that real quick. So we'll go back to the document, close my preview panel. Let's see. So this is the feast, that's more of a hymn, but you do have that melody tab there. Here we go. So salutation and collect, you've got melody. And in this case, you also can do it with text and melody. So if the pastor is like me and doesn't chant, you can have the pastors be text and the response be sung. So depending on what liturgy element, you might have different options there in terms of how you put it in there too. So always take a look at that because that'll give you some different options. And if you need to, if you want to make your own, depending on what talents you have in terms of compiling that, you can always go and click edit, and that'll take that into My Worship Resources, and you can add things here. So a little bit more advanced stuff than what we're talking about today. All right, and Joe, thanks for mentioning the post-communion collect before. I already did that. Now, thanks to your suggestion. What is the difference between creative worship in LSB and the version on cph.org? There's probably too much detail that I can answer other than saying if you subscribe to creative worship as opposed to buying them one-off, you have the rights to access the content or most of the content through Lutheran Service Builder, where it would show up for you each week, and you can bring it in and choose your different options. We've got some other training webinars on that. If you just, you can Google it or you go into our resource center, you can find those. If you're subscribed, you can email me and I'll send you the link to it. but I don't want to send the link to people who aren't subscribed and confuse them. So let me put my email back up there. So just for Jonathan, for you, I wanted to share that with you. All right, next up. Joe saying, if you attach a hymn to a slide, it only plays on the first slide. How do you make the hymn play across all the slides for that hymn? Make a hymn play across it. Not sure if I understand exactly what you mean, Joe. Let me go to the presentation view real quick. You have a few different options with presentation where, like here, this one says entrance hymn. This button here gives you, tells you where you put that caption. Is it all of them? Is it the first one? Is it a separate slide? And then these don't have it. So that's probably, I think that's what you're asking about. If not, let me know. All right. Silas says, does the software alert you if a particular hymn you've chosen is not included in the streaming license? Yes, it does. Thank you for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that before. It gives you a little warning. For Lutheran Service Builder, if you're using one of our other service builders, streaming is not included with that, so none of them are available. But within Lutheran Service Builder, yes, it does. Kurt's asking, are the customizations to the order of service tied to the login or the overall account? So if our music director starts the process and our secretary wants to work on the order of service, how does that sharing happen? It is saved to the account, not to the login. In fact, I should have mentioned this earlier. You can have as many logins as you want. Oops. If you go up here to settings and account settings, you can invite more users. Actually, I can't because I'm not logged in apparently as the owner. Oh no, there it is, new invitations right underneath there. So yeah, I am the owner. It says so right there. You can add more users and they all work on the same services, use the same My Worship resources. All of that is in the same account. So no seat licenses, nothing like that. Let's see, Candy saying, are the prices quoted by you the cost for us in Wells? Wells is a little bit different. So we've got that available on our partner MPH's website. So there's a lot that goes into the pricing, especially because of rights and copyrights and all that. So that's a little bit different. All right, how are the speaker symbols added? Jesse is asking. Those are mostly part of the liturgy elements here. Now this again depends on your hymnal. In Lutheran Service Builder, we're using the Lutheran Service Book, which includes those. If it's a different builder, well then it may not include those. But you find those through the formatting. So if you go here to edit your bulletin format, go to layout, content, that's this use symbols for speakers. That's how you turn that on. And now, granted, it's coming right out of the hymnal, so if you need a different symbol, you may need to edit those, but you create those custom elements and it works. What it does actually is that when you go to export your service, it asks you to install a font. Those are all part of the font. So if you change them after the fact, you don't have to do it all in here. You could change them all with a replace all or something like that. So I can't get into all the details right now, but it's pretty easy to do. It's especially, if you're not using the symbols, that's just modifying text, but the symbols itself are just a font applied to your text. All right, Tim left, but he thanked us for doing that. Joe followed up in PowerPoint, attaching a hymn only will play on the first side. I'm wondering if you mean if you attach the music. Is that what you mean, Joe? Attaching a hymn only playing on the first slide? That's more of a PowerPoint question that I'm not sure if I can answer that. Yeah, if you're talking about the actual audio files of that, that's an area outside of Builder. We don't actually attach audio files to PowerPoints. So I can't really comment on that from a professional standpoint. Thinking from a personal experience, I haven't done much with attaching audio files to PowerPoints. Okay, yes, that is. I'm sorry, I wish I could help you more. Yeah, I don't remember exactly how that works in PowerPoint. Now, one thing you could do if you are using our Concordia organist, yeah, how do you play the hymns and liturgy music alongside the slide presentation? That's really what you're asking. If you're using Concordia organist to generate your files, typically what's done is those are kind of played separately. Like they're not tied together. Now you could split up the files by stanza so they show up separately. The way Concordia organist works, you pick your stanzas and then it exports a file with the exact number of stanzas. What often, yeah, I know a lot of customers do, they're just having those done differently. They're not directly tied to their PowerPoint. Yeah, I don't want to suggest splicing those. I don't really have a good solution for you since that's not native functionality of Builder. But I will share that with our team for feedback because we've had requests for, can you automatically attach the audio files to the presentation? There's a lot of challenges with that, with file formats and file size. Something we've looked into and is still on our radar of trying to find a better way of doing it. We couldn't find a good way of doing it that wasn't super costly. So we kind of set that on the side for now, but I'll share that with the team. But in general, I know our customers who are doing that are doing those as two separate things: presentation, audio. Either different people doing it, or they, hit the play button on the audio and then just have the presentation going manually. So, yeah, I wish I had a better suggestion for you. At my church, one of the things our organist does, do I need two screens to do this? Not necessarily two screens, but just two ways of going about it. One of the things my organist does, our music director, he actually records the hymns as videos on the computer and manually goes through the slideshow. So by the time he's done, he's got a video file that does it and he plays it. Now he's not using Concordia organist, he's recording this and often singing along with it for the streaming that we do. And so by the time he's done, he has this collection of video files that have the music with it. And we repurpose those from service to service. All right, so yeah, two screens, not necessarily just two ways of doing it. You might need, two monitors. Two monitors is always helpful, but I don't think it's absolutely necessary, or two screens displaying it. You just need a way to run the audio. I mean, some people are even still doing it on CD players or plugging in their phone into the audio system and hitting play. We hear of a lot of different ways of doing it. But yeah, in terms of attaching it stanza by stanza on the PowerPoint, I don't have a good option there. All right, let's see. Maggie saying, in the content field, what is the emphasize option control? This is an interesting new one. I've toggled the option that didn't see anything change. This is a slight indication based on customer feedback. So if you go to Bulletin Formats, and we'll go here, content decision fields. We didn't know, there's not an official name for this, but if you look here, remembrance of baptism. In holy baptism, name was closed with the robe of Christ's righteousness. We emphasize it by bolding or by underlining and italicizing that. So that's what changes. The reason for that is that some people either forgot to change the text, or some people were saying in holy baptism name was closed with, and just reading it because it wasn't, the brackets weren't enough. So when we put emphasize right now, it's just having it be underlined and italic. In the future, we're looking at having it be something where Builder asks you, what would you like to put here? What do you want for the name? Is it his or her? That kind of thing. Right now, we don't have that. There's a lot of coding that would go into all the different variables. We thought it would be, just those two things, name and his or her. But actually, if you go through the all of the different liturgy options that have it, it's a lot. So that's what it is right now. It just underlines and italicizes it. All right, I think I got everyone's question, and we still have a good group with us, and I'm 24 minutes over time. So I apologize for that, but thank you for sticking with me. I'll go back here. There's my contact information. I'm also going to put up our support information. Let me go to that slide. There you go. That's the best way to get help post-webinar. But I want to thank you for being here today. It was a lot of fun. I love doing these webinars. I love answering your questions, and so does our support team. So if you have more, reach out to them. But otherwise, we're going to close up today. And thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.